Hollywood loves secrets. Some are whispered in dark back rooms, while others are buried so deeply they're never meant to come to light. But 3 weeks before he died, Gene Hackman did the unthinkable. He broke his silence. After decades of silence, he told a truth about Hollywood that was so dark and unsettling that it shocked everyone who heard it. But instead of putting an end to the story, his revelation only raised more questions. Was it a warning, a confession, or a last-ditch effort to get away from the shadows that were closing in on him? Stay with us to find out. Hackman was never the type of actor who just played a role. He erupted. His anger on screen wasn't the empty, self-indulgent kind that made Jack Nicholson famous. Hackman's rage came from a deeper, more complex place. It felt like a good man's breaking point. He had a special ability to hold back his anger until it simmered beneath the surface, always ready to boil over. This ability, this raw intensity, came from childhood pain. When Hackman was 13, his father walked away. It wasn't a tearful goodbye, just a silent wave from a passing car. That one motion carried more weight than any words could have. It was a wound that never fully healed. Decades later, he used that same haunting wave in a scene in The French Connection, which was a reflection of the loss and abandonment that shaped him. "Maybe that's why I became an actor," Hackman once said. "I doubt I would have become so sensitive to human behavior if that hadn't happened to me as a child." Hackman was angry because he had a mother and younger brother that he didn't get along with. When he was 16, he lied about his age and joined the Marines as a way to get away. It was both an act of rebellion and survival. The discipline and structure made him tough, but the scars of his childhood stayed with him. When he finally got into Hollywood, he brought that anger with him. He was known to give directors a hard time as if they were making them pay for the father who left him. "What the hell," he once said, "make them pay for the father who left me." The pain Hackman was going through wasn't just personal. It made him very aware of Hollywood's dark side, the parts that no one talked about. He saw how easily people got used to the industry's cruelty, politics, and cold indifference, but Hackman never did. He refused to get used to the hypocrisy and backstabbing, or how power crushed the weak. He was known for being defiant and calling out manipulation when others turned a blind eye. Maybe that's why he turned down roles that could have the graduate disaster now regular people. If the money wasn't right or the deal wasn't fair, he didn't play the game. He was at his best when he faced the raw, uncomfortable parts of his best performance was in The Conversation, which showed a man tormented by his own paranoia and guilt. When he played Papy Doyle again in The French Connection, he didn't just play the part again, he expanded it by putting all of himself into a scary detox scene that felt like real withdrawal. In Night Moves, Hackman's director, Arthur Penn, said it best. He will go back and visit some early pain that many of us would rather not touch. Hackman wasn't just acting, he relived, exposed, and refused to forget. And in the end, that 13-year-old boy who was left standing on the street watching his father wave goodbye never really left him. But maybe that boy found some peace in the roles that let him turn his pain into something greater than himself. Hackman made a name for himself as one of Hollywood's greatest actors, even though he had personal problems. But when he decided to leave, everyone wondered why. He gave a reason, but instead of ending the mystery, his words raised more unsettling questions about Hollywood than they answered. Gene Hackman's sudden departure from Hollywood was both quiet and surprising. For decades, he had dominated the screen, playing some of the most complex and emotionally charged characters in film history. Since his last movie, Welcome to Mooseport, came out in 2004, it wasn't a great send-off for an actor of his caliber. Fans and critics alike were left wondering why he quit at the peak of his legendary career. He said it was because of his health, but was that really the truth? In a 2009 interview with Empire magazine, he said that a stress test in New York had made him decide to retire. "The doctor told me that my heart wasn't in the kind of shape that I should be putting it under any stress." That was a reasonable reason for leaving, coming from a man in his 70s who had given everything to his career. But something about his words and the way he said them raised questions. Was it really just about his health, or was there something deeper at play? By the late 1990s, Hackman had already pulled away from the spotlight. In an interview with Charlie Rose in 1999, he said he had no plans to come back to the stage and said that his time in New York was like being stung by a cockroach. His choice of words, which were dark and unsettling, showed how uncomfortable he felt about his early years in the business. Hollywood was never really home to Hackman. He saw what others wouldn't: power struggles, exploitation, and constant pressure that could break even the strongest men. By 2011, he had talked about retiring again, this time in GQ, saying that he would only consider making another movie if it could be shot entirely in his own house without him being there. Hackman, who used to run sets with his presence, didn't want to be involved with the business anymore. In 2003, when he accepted the Cecil B. Dale Lifetime Achievement Award at the Golden Globes, he proudly said, "I never wanted to be anything but an actor." But just a year later, he quit everything. He found peace in painting, co-authoring novels with his friend Daniel F. Lenihan, and spending quiet days in Santa Fe, New Mexico, with his wife Betsy Arakawa. He had found peace in a world far from the chaos of Hollywood, but the industry's shadows never went away completely. One question remains: was it really the stress of acting that drove Hackman away, or was there something much darker going on? 3 weeks before Hackman's death, a long-hidden truth came to light. The Hollywood he left behind was not only tiring, it was toxic. What he had kept to himself all these years was finally coming to light. The industry had changed, but not for the better, and maybe Hackman had seen it all coming long before the rest of the world did. Gene Hackman was a man of great talent, but he was also a man of great burdens. For decades, he carried the weight of Hollywood's darkest secrets, secrets he couldn't talk about while he was still a child. But 3 weeks before he died, he made a phone call that would change everything. He told one of his best friends, "I'm tired of keeping this secret in my heart." He had seen too much. He had been to the fancy parties where Hollywood's elite gathered to pretend to party. But there was something evil going on beneath the surface. He talked about the horrible truth that was kept hidden at these events. Hackman said the parties weren't just for fun, they were a hunting ground. Hackman had always been a man of integrity who didn't fully follow Hollywood's twisted rules, but what he saw behind the scenes broke his heart. He remembered seeing young, weak actors and even children being lured into these exclusive circles only to be preyed on by powerful people, including directors, producers, and some of the biggest names in acting. It wasn't just a few bad apples, he said. It was the system, the fear that ran Hollywood, and how people who dared to speak out were blacklisted, had their careers ruined, and their lives ruined. He had seen it happen too many times. Promising young actors who suddenly disappeared from the industry. There were rumors of threats and other tactics used to keep the truth hidden. "They have ways to make you disappear even if you're still walking around," he said. Hackman himself was a target when he started to distance himself from the industry and talk about how he didn't agree with Hollywood's morals. He felt the pressure of corruption. He was given warnings, at first more subtly, then more directly: play the game or risk losing everything. That's when he knew he had to quit. His official reason for retiring was health, but that wasn't the whole story. The stress wasn't just from the demanding roles or the long hours. It was from knowing that the industry that had given him everything had also shown him its worst side, and he couldn't be a part of it anymore. In his last days, he could no longer keep quiet. "People need to know," he told his friend. "They need to understand what really goes on behind those gates." Aside from that, Gene Hackman's death has revealed another dark side of Hollywood. But before we do that, let's look at a shocking link between one of his movies and the mystery surrounding his death. Gene Hackman was commanding on screen. At 6'2", he seemed even bigger in his roles. He stood tall over the landscapes, both physically and mentally. Yet, in 1974's The Conversation, one of Hackman's best movies, he played against that very presence. His character, Harry Caul, was a man who was troubled by his own moral problems, paranoid, and unable to tell the difference between truth and manipulation. With Hackman's recent and tragic death, which included him, his wife, and their dog, in what was officially called an accident, The Conversation takes on a new tone. His performance as Caul, a surveillance expert who gets caught in a web of lies, feels like an unsettling reflection of the world we live in now. But more than that, it seems to hint at something much darker that was hidden behind Hackman's last days. In The Conversation, Harry Caul is a man who is filled with guilt. His work as a surveillance expert led to the deaths of 3 people, leaving him tormented and wary of human contact. When hired to spy on a young couple, he misinterprets a crucial conversation. People in the conversation think they are in danger of being killed. In a disturbing dream, Caul desperately tries to warn the woman Amy. Through a foggy landscape, he calls out to her, finally saying, "I'm not afraid of death, I'm afraid of murder." These words carry a lot of meaning. They show Caul's deep fear of unseen forces planning destruction from the shadow. Caul's story in The Conversation is one of loneliness and disappointment. His paranoia grows as he realizes he has been tricked into a role in something bad. As he rips apart his own apartment looking for hidden surveillance devices, it becomes clear that he will never find peace because the forces watching him work in ways he can't fully understand. Hackman also quit Hollywood, painting and writing instead. Was it just the stress of acting, as he said, or was there something deeper? He never publicly criticized the industry, but those who did. Some people who knew him say he had lost faith in the industry a long time ago. During his career, spanning decades, he saw firsthand the unchecked power of producers, directors, and major stars. He had also attended the fancy parties where shady deals took place behind the glittering lights. Was his decision to stop acting really about health, or was it an attempt to escape an industry whose secrets he could no longer stomach? In the conversation Harry calls Nightmare, he realizes that he has misread everything, and that the people he thought were victims were actually the ones who were. The news breaks him down, leaving him broken and alone. In Hackman's case, one last unsettling parallel comes to light. He seemed at peace in his later years, but was he just hiding a dark secret? We live in a time when people like the director Mark and Amy, who are cruel, dishonest, and driven by the desire for power, are planning mass deaths by cutting healthcare programs at home and abroad and torturing marginalized communities with the end goal of wiping them out of public life, targeting immigrants, documented and undocumented, with deportation to countries that will kill them, or American detention centers where no one knows what is going on. Pardoning traitors, insurrectionists, fascist militia members, and pedophiles, bringing extremists to the highest levels of government to help genocidal dictators around the world so that we can copy their strategies here at home. Hackman gave Harry a strong need to hear and be heard in order to share painful experiences. It was hard for him to believe the best in people, like Amy in his dream. He showed what happens to someone like Harry when that belief is broken. From teaching powerful lessons through his movies while he was alive to revealing Hollywood's darkest secrets after he died, Gene Hackman's legacy now carries an unsettling new weight. At 95, Hackman had long since stepped away from the spotlight, choosing to live a quiet life in Santa Fe, New Mexico, with his wife Betsy Arakawa. It's hard to say what happened with Hackman's death. The official reports say it was an accident, but the details only add to the mystery. His body was found near the kitchen, and Arakawa's was in the bathroom, with her hands and feet showing signs of decomposition. Their German Shepherd dog was locked in a closet. Investigators found prescription pills all over the place, but there was no clear reason for such a disturbing scene. There have been many theories about Hackman's death, ranging from a tragic accident to something more sinister. His death adds to a long history of Hollywood tragedies that have been surrounded by controversy. Hollywood's history is full of famous suicides. In 1932, the British actress Peg Entwistle jumped off the Hollywood sign. Everyone knows the story of Marilyn Monroe, who coroners say killed herself in 1962. 10 years later, Monroe's All About Eve co-star George Sanders also killed himself. Later, he left 2 notes, one of which said, "Dear world, I'm leaving because I'm bored." In 1997, 39 members of the Heaven's Gate cult were found dead in a rented mansion in San Diego. Their hair was cut short, and they were all wearing brand new black and white Nike Decades sneakers. The People's Temple of Jim Jones was a suicide cult that operated in San Francisco before it famously moved to Guyana and killed over 900 of its followers. Depressed comedian and actor Freddie Prinze, who was in a lot of popular teen romances in the 1990s, killed himself in front of his manager. And Robin Williams killed himself in California's Paradise Cay in 2014. There are tragedies all over Hollywood, both direct and indirect suicides caused by very hard living. Hollywood has a history of shutting down people who know too much. Stars who question the status quo often face career destruction or worse. Brittany Murphy's death at 32 was first ruled as pneumonia, but later tainted by claims of poisoning. People have been guessing for a long time about Heath Ledger's death, which was said to be an accidental overdose, especially considering the roles he had played and the darkness he was said to have uncovered. Gene Hackman's case is different. He was 95 years old, had been out of the business for a long time, and seemed to be at peace. But the chilling details of his death suggest that it wasn't just an accident. The way the bodies were found, his wife's strange condition, the pills that were lying around, and the dog that was locked up all paint a picture that doesn't quite fit. Can we really look at the deaths of Hackman and Arakawa without bias? The media often struggles to show real compassion, and the deaths are mysterious. It's tempting to link them to Hollywood's history of scandals and secrets, but maybe we shouldn't. People like to use stories like these to teach us lessons, like how fame doesn't bring happiness, or how big age gaps in relationships are always a problem, or how Hollywood is full of weird, secretive people. We don't know what's true, but one thing is for sure. Social media will always make celebrity deaths a spectacle by feeding off of rumors and crazy theories. Hackman Arakawa and their dog's sad end remind us of something that young Hollywood stars don't always understand. Sometimes the best thing is being able to live and die in peace.